Welcome to Money Talk. I'm Jesse Torres.
And I'm Aaron Michael Sanchez.
All right, Aaron, it is Wednesday, 4 o'clock. That means it's time for another session of
Money Talk.
That's right. Thanks for being there with me.
You know why? Because I was thinking right now, we're talking about something I'm very passionate about. When you told me this subject, you saw me jump out of my seat because I'm very passionate about this, because I think people need to know that they are being taken advantage of.
Yeah, and so let's not keep the listeners in suspense any longer. We're going to be talking about social media and how it's evolving into a pay-to-play model. And, Aaron, I know you personally have tens of thousands of followers, and, you have been very successful in years past in terms of getting your content out, getting the word out. And you and I, as recently as a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about how there is somewhat of a throttling or a stranglehold being placed upon brands, being placed upon individuals such as yourself in terms of their ability to reach their fans, their followers, their connections. And so we're going to be talking to a couple experts in this area. We're going to be talking with Barbara Katzos, who's the director of marketing for Giroux Glass Company. And I want to kind of start this off with a quote. There's a fellow out there by the name of Eric Qualman, and he wrote a book called Socialnomics several years ago, and it's one of the most widely quoted books out there on social media. And what he said in the book, he says, we don't have a choice on whether we do social media. The question is how well we do it. And, and that's true. I mean, right. I think today, if you're not on social, if you're a brand, if you're a company, whatever it is, if you're a product, service, whatever, if you don't have a social presence, you run the risk of becoming obsolete. Now, personalities, personal brands, right? The brand the brand that is Aaron M. Sanchez. If you're not on social, you run the risk of becoming obsolete.
And I've thought of it. I've thought of getting off social for a couple times. But the reality is I have to look back at the past and say there's so many opportunities that have come because of it.
Absolutely. You can't. The question is how well we do it. And so what's happening, what's evolved is, and I don't know that this was done by design necessarily, but it certainly evolved this way, as the social media companies, as the Facebooks, as the Twitters, as the LinkedIn, as the Instagrams, as all these companies recognize, hey, everyone is here. How do we make money off of this? Because they knew the people would come. They knew if they built it, they would come. But I'm not sure that even Facebook, when it got started in the early days, thought that it would have 1 billion plus active users worldwide.
And I think also, people that are on the capital side, which we talk about making money
and
all
we bring
the
them
time.
in here.
And we bring them in here. But, that there's nothing wrong with making money. But I think on the way it's being done right now, it's almost PR sabotage. I mean, this is the type of thing that PR companies have to come in and say, how can we make you look better because you're making yourself look terrible? Right. You're having one of these TMZ moments that you shouldn't have out there. And this is mainly because people have not been aware of what's happening lately. Those that are behind the scenes, like the ones we're going to be talking to, they know what's happening, and it's wrong. Yeah, I'm just going to say that right now.
It is, and it's putting a lot of companies at risk, small companies in particular. And so let's start talking with someone from one of these small companies. So on the phone we have Barbara Katzos, who's the director of marketing at Giroux Glass. Barbara, welcome to Money Talk.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back, Jesse.
Yeah, well, thank you for being back. We wanted to bring you back. You were on the show maybe 5-6 months ago, and we were talking a little bit about social. We kind of just touched on it, but I wanted to bring you back because you are one of those smaller companies. I mean, and small is relative. I mean, you are a $30 million company. You provide glazing services, glass services, throughout the Western states, but in the world of glazers, you're a relatively smaller player, and you rely on your branding capabilities, particularly social media related, to sort of get the word out. What are your thoughts on this whole evolution that's occurring in terms of social and moving to this pay-to-play model?
Well, it does impact us very significantly as a smaller size company, because when you look at your success with social media content and your reach, you want to reach as many people as possible. But it's engineered to work in a way that not everybody you want getting your posts gets to see your posts. And, everyone who clicks on the like button doesn't necessarily get to see what you post show up in their timeline. So, there's been a recent movement in companies like Facebook, and now it's starting to move towards Twitter as well, to very conscientiously limit your reach. And they do that by limiting how many of the people who are following you actually get to see the content that you've posted. And the average was about 6%. But for companies like ours that are even smaller, who have less than 500 followers, we've seen the organic reach fall on an average from what was maybe 4% to about 2%. And some experts say that it won't even be long before organic reach hits absolutely zero. And you're saying...
And that's a great point. And sorry, I just want to kind of, Forrester Research, which is a big think tank, a big research company, and they do a lot of work around marketing and companies and branding. They released a report not that long ago, and there was a quote in there by one of the authors of the report, a fellow by the name of Nate Elliott. And what he said was this: he said, everyone who clicks the like button on a brand's Facebook page volunteers to receive that brand's messages. We're volunteering. We're saying, I want to receive that information. And so by denying me, if you're a Facebook, if you're a Twitter, if you're any other social media platform, by denying me, you are preventing me from doing exactly the thing that I'm on your site to do, which is receive content from the brands that I follow.
It's true. They are purposefully limiting that exposure, and it's almost like they dangled the carrot. They got us to learn to love what it could do for us, and now they'd rather have us pay to get it.
And I just want to throw into our listeners, that are maybe going, what's organic reach? What's the difference? When you post an actual post, there are ones that you may post and you say, check this out, and you're not asking for anybody's input, so therefore people are not commenting on it. That can create less of less people to see it. But as people are seeing it, they have this algorithm which they said, well, based on how many likes and comments you get, then it's going to be seen more widely. But the reality is, even that's not happening. And that's the point that we're bringing out, that this organic reach is not happening, right?
Well, I think if you know what you're doing, there are ways around it. And I think in the few months that we've been working on that at Giroux, we started very conscientiously going after this in May. Mid-May to mid-September, that's 4 months. We're already showing some really good improvements in our numbers, and they're above the industry averages. And I think it's because of the way we're doing what we're doing. And I'd love to share that with people, because I'd like more people to take advantage of it, knowing what's relevant for their own audiences, to try and get around this.
So, Barbara, as a small business, now that you're seeing this pay-to-play model and this throttling, if you will, of the ability to reach your fans or followers organically, what do you see as options out there for these small businesses and these other brands?
But one of the things we've done is look very closely into what times of the day our followers tend to go online, and that's when we post. And we found a significant jump up in people seeing our posts and clicking and commenting and engaging on them when it's at the times that work for our audience. And they could be completely different for different markets and different types of audiences. But for us, we know when they're online, that's when we post. And by doing that, when they do click onto Facebook at the times that they tend to look, what we post will show up at the top of the timeline, and they will engage with it. It won't be buried somewhere further down or not there at all.
Barbara, and that's a great point, because so the organic reach is being cut back, we know, and we've seen it, and all the research suggests that. But you bring up another good point, which is, even beyond the throttling that is occurring, if you don't time your posts properly, people just aren't going to see those posts. Let's take Twitter, for example. Your tweet is here and it's gone. It's here and it's gone. As other tweets hit your timeline and they get kind of pushed out of the way, you're not going to sit there as an end user and scroll through the last 3 or 4 hours worth of tweets. I mean, there's just so many of them. So you're right. It's critical then, even more critical than it was before, to find out when your particular audience is reviewing those tweets, is online, is looking at their feeds. Because by doing so, even though you're being throttled, at least you're not then doing yourself an additional harm by posting at times in which they're not there. And you know, Aaron, you and I talk about this all the time. You know, utilizing tools like Hootsuite that allow, you know, it's a free tool that you can get that you can get online, and it allows you to schedule your tweets, your LinkedIn posts, your Facebook posts, so that you don't actually. So, you know, for example, in my case, I have, let's say on LinkedIn, I have over 11,000 connections, but my following is worldwide. And so, because, you know, I have folks that follow me not only here in the States, but in Asia and the Middle East as well. And so what I've done is exactly what Barbara has said is I've gone out and I figured out exactly when they're online, and I post during those times. And surprisingly for me, it's midnight, 3 a.m., 7 a.m., and 6 in the evening. And those are the prime times for my audience. But it's important for listeners to know that every company, every brand can be a different time, because it depends on what the composition of their following is like. And so at this point, I recommend for folks to find me on LinkedIn, because on LinkedIn, I actually wrote an article there on LinkedIn on exactly how to go about and find what those peak times are for your audiences. So Barbara, let me ask you one more question then. I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, are you then, you know, going to give in to the pay to play model and do that, or are you going to, you know, do more in line with what Rosie is suggesting, which is, you know, just abandon that platform altogether and, you know, and pay Facebook back the favor by leaving them, and as well taking the followers with you? I mean, so what are you planning to do there?
Well, you know what? It's still working for us. We're not ready to abandon it at all. In fact, I'm quite happy with the success that we have had with most social media sites lately. So we're not ready to start handing anybody over any cash. And you know, we're not a huge company. We're not looking to throw money at people who are trying to, I think you're right, take advantage of the situation because they know it's grown so far in popularity. We're not ready to pay for it yet. We'll find other creative ways of making sure it works for us. Another good way of getting more people to watch what we're posting is by making sure it's the content that they want to see, and by having them engage. I think what we're doing right now is working, and if it's not broken for us right now, we're not looking to fix it.
So, Barbara, I want to ask you, so you recently started a campaign within Giroux Glass Company to increase the number of followers on various platforms. One of the questions that I always get, so I put on I put on a number of workshops, and one of my most popular is one that's called social selling. And I put on this workshop every month. And the question that I get every session I put it on is this, who should I, when using LinkedIn, who should I accept as a connection? Because I've been told to only accept people I know. Now, Barbara, I'm not going to tell you my personal opinion on this yet, but I want to get your personal take, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Well, you've already said that you have, 10,000 followers on LinkedIn, so I would guess that you probably don't personally know them all intimately. But I feel like anybody who's connected with you in the industry is a good person to be connected with. And if I at least have some, contact in common with the person, or we've worked at the same company, that's a good reason to be connected. Because you never know when those circles can help both of you in a mutually beneficial way.
And you just nailed it. And so, for example, yesterday I lectured yesterday at UC Irvine. It was a class of about 40 some international students, and it was on LinkedIn, how to use LinkedIn, and they were graduating, and they needed some pointers on how to use LinkedIn to find a potential job prospect. Without fail, 100% of the time this question comes up, and there are people out there that have real strong opinions about this. And from my perspective, like I said, it's all about eyeballs. In the traditional pre-social world, it was all about eyeballs. I mean, Barbara, you remember when you first started in marketing and advertising, your goal was to get as many eyeballs to look at your product, to look at your advertisement, to look at all that stuff. Why should social, from the standpoint of a professional social network, be any different?
Well, you're right. I mean, that used to be the key phrase. It was all about the repetition. But I'd just like to add one other point about who do you accept in your LinkedIn connection circle. when you have a company Facebook page, it doesn't hurt at all for your company to show a personal and human side of it. And you can use the kind of post that you post on a regular basis to show that side of you, so that people do like what you stand for, what you represent, what kind of company you are. They get to know a little bit more about who you are. And by having people that work for the company that have a wider social network, and they further expand that potential pool of who might be seeing these posts, it's only a good thing. And I'd like to give an illustration of a personal anecdote here. We recently had an opportunity where we were nominated for a national industry award. And in order to get the votes for the winner, we put the word out. We had a superintendent who had been in the industry for more than 30 years who was nominated for this prize, Ned Witham. And we were allowed to, on LinkedIn and Facebook and everywhere else, say, please vote for the superintendent who did an awesome job on, this is the Dolce & Gabbana store in Las Vegas. Everybody was going to come to his LinkedIn profile site to see it. We then had to fix his profile site, his profile, because his LinkedIn page had not been very extensive at all, basically his name and his address. We spent about an hour and a half updating every project he'd ever worked on, and people saw, oh my God, this is a guy of major value. He's been in the industry for 30 plus years. Do you know that he just told me that he did win the award, by the way, so the campaign worked and was successful, but one of the very first projects he had listed, he was contacted by a guy that he worked with on that project who had not even been in touch with the guy for over 30 years, and they were both personally thrilled to have connected with each other after all these years. So I'm thinking, okay, so it's worth the time and effort, even if you're not somebody who's LinkedIn like you are, Jesse, with all those contacts, even for the individual, just for, a personal level of feeling like you've done all you can to keep in touch with the people you really care about. What better way now is there to, keep your network active and in touch with you?
Yeah, Barbara, and one of the things that I teach my students in my workshops is that people don't do business with companies. People do business with people. And so you're absolutely right, to the extent that an organization can personalize, can personify that organization. If it's no longer viewed as four walls and a roof, as a concrete building, as a incorporation, and it's viewed more as just a group of people, then you're going to have much greater success, getting the deal done.
I was at the YouTube seminar last week, and one of the questions was, do you respond to every comment, including negative comments?
No.
And negative comments, especially for businesses, can be a good or bad thing, depending on how you handle it.
Absolutely.
And the information that was given to me on the site, actually, because they didn't want to say it at YouTube, was, obviously when you give attention to a negative comment in a bad way, now you're bringing attention to it that wouldn't have been brought to it. But if you're a business, let's say the person said, oh, it was terrible food, or I was treated terribly, and they put this up on Yelp or any other social media site, a company can say, we're sorry you had that experience. How can we make it better? And do that in a public way and do it in a customer service way. That shows, number one, to that person, hey, we see you and we want to take care of you. And then it tells the public that are seeing this, hey, wow, they really care.
Barbara, have you experienced anything along those lines?
Oh, it's funny you're asking me this. It just happened to me, Jesse. I parked at LAX, and the valet parking service damaged our car while we were on vacation. Came back, picked it up, they made us file a damage report. And so they filled out the report. They said, call in the morning, speak to the manager. This named manager did not respond to phone calls for the next 10 days. And I said to my friend, I know what to do about this. I simply went on their Facebook page and I put a picture of the damaged car, the back end.
Wow.
And I said, this is what happened when I parked at your parking service. Within 24 hours, I had the highest level of customer service person writing me, apologizing, promising to make it good, and they have. And I was so grateful. I wrote them back on Facebook so everybody could see the whole chain of them having properly addressed a bad situation. And I said, thank you for taking care of this. When the problem was taken care of initially, I said, I will fill everybody in with what you've done. And then I wrote again. I said, it's been taken care of. The company came through. They had their VP of customer service get on it. That was fantastic. But on a company level, thankfully, that hasn't happened to us yet. But if it does happen, you're right on the nose with that. You just have to address the issue in a way that shows people that you care about their concern, that you do have the customer service that it takes to keep customers happy, and that your goal is to keep your customers happy. That will do more for you almost than never having had that negative review.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think time and time again, we see big companies in particular, you think about the large companies and you think, they're so smart. They've got a lot of high-priced people, a lot of well-educated people, degrees from Ivy League schools in marketing and business, making these mistakes over and over and over again. And you sit there and you say, who are these people and why can't they learn this lesson? All right, so I want to kind of shift gears. Barbara, in your case, so Giroux Glass Company, you're very narrow in terms of, the folks that follow you are either in the construction business or they're in the glass business or maybe they're contractors or subcontractors. How do you go about finding content to share with your followers, and what type of content, being in the glass and construction business, do you find resonates most with your followers?
Well, luckily for us, it's such photo-worthy type of content that people like to see. Beautiful buildings, beautiful projects that are going on in architecture. We post what's relevant either to our business or involves a common interest with our followers. So maybe information about up-and-coming shows or trends, news from a client designer, architect's sites. We follow others that we know have interesting content too, and we post what we think is of interest to us that, know it will appeal to our followers as well. So we're out there mining for what has to do with design, construction, not just necessarily glass. Somewhere ultimately the building will have glass in it, but we know these are people who have an interest in design and high-level design and architecture as well. So it's really